Hi, and welcome to the Tattoo Teacher podcast, where we get to know the person behind the professional, going below the surface of what we see. Join with me as I talk to some incredible individuals from around Australia and the globe. On today's episode, I was joined by Alys Tipler, and I hope you enjoyed this great conversation. Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good ever what time of day it is that you're listening to this podcast. Tonight's episode, well, I'm going to say tonight because that's where I am. I have the amazing Alys Tipler. Alys is a dear friend of mine, but a little bit more about her. She holds a Bachelor of Education majoring in English and History. She has won the Commonwealth Bank and Schools Plus Early Year Career Teacher Award in 2022. She was the Literacy Coordinator, Year Level Coordinator, and also Acting Head of English at Browns Plains State High School. She has just been appointed to the Head of Department position at Chinchilla State High. And more importantly, and most importantly, I think, is she's married to Claudia and they have a beautiful young daughter. So, Alys, welcome to the Tattoo Teacher podcast.
Thank you for that. That was a great intro. Happy to be here.
Looking at that, now, look, we've known each other for a while, so it's good to, it's great to chat with you always. But looking at your little bio there, you've done a lot in how many years of teaching now?
I'm in my 7th year of teaching currently, so yeah, crammed it all in at that point.
You have certainly crammed a lot into 7 years of teaching. Well, almost 7 years. We've got a term and a bit to go, so you're doing well. You've made it through that hurdle of the 5-year mark, so well done to you.
Thank you. It was definitely just like dragging on by the end of it, but yeah, I made it through and keep going, thankfully.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, with all that you do, what is your why behind it? Why are you doing this? Why are you a teacher? Why are you, English history? There's all those things. So, but what's your why behind what you're doing?
I kind of have 2 whys. So the first why is why did I start, and the second why is why am I still doing it despite everything else. So first why comes back to my parents, as it typically does. Both of my parents, neither of them graduated high school. My dad dropped out in year 8. My mum dropped out in year 10. So throughout all the time that I was growing up, they were really pushing me and my sister, you have to graduate, you have to do something, either full-time work or go to university. So that was always just in the back of my mind constantly. And I was really lucky that I went to a school, McGregor State High School, where I was really surrounded by people who valued education and valued university. And I really liked my teachers, which was nice. It's always nice to like your teachers in year 12 when they're pushing you to try and be the best that you can be when you're all angsty and teenagery. So that was my first thing. I wanted to be a teacher, but I had a lot of people around me actually saying, don't be a teacher, there's not really much to do, which was quite disappointing in hindsight as a teacher currently, and I see the passion and the drive in that. So I didn't go to university straight away. I did a Bachelor of Arts because I didn't really know what I was doing. Didn't really like it, but I really loved learning and I really loved being in university and also just being surrounded by all these people that had passions for different things. So dropped out, took a gap year, realized that I actually want to go back and I wanted to be a teacher and I should have done it in the first place. So went to uni, met my wife, and in that, I was really fortunate that all of the pracs, or most of the pracs that I was on, I had 4 in total and 3 of them were in low SES schools low SES in Logan. And I really found that I loved working with students who maybe were from a less disenfranchised background, and seeing those kids really striving above their means or working in a system that maybe at times doesn't really support them to the best capacity. I found that's where I was getting the most out of what I wanted. So that's my first why. My second why of why I keep going kind of comes back to what I learned on prac and also just the teachers that I was surrounding myself with. So being around people who also saw the value in helping students and being there for students, being maybe probably the only person who actually smiles at them in the day or says good morning to them, and then also seeing kids who their postcode shouldn't define their education, and yet unfortunately sometimes it does. So that's my why to an extent. I like to be there in schools where I can be the person that maybe is helping students to overcome something. Yeah, so those are my two whys of why I'm a teacher and why I keep teaching.
They are two magnificent reasons. The drive to be good at what you want to do, to have that encouragement, maybe push from your parents to work harder and reach a level that they just didn't have the opportunity to. So that's fantastic. And now also working in those lower socioeconomic areas to help those students achieve, to use the drive that was given to you to maybe help them. So working in those schools, what's one of the toughest things that you find, like with the student body?
Not taking things too personally, I think. So I'm not gonna lie, my first year was rough. I was coming home weekly in tears sometimes, thinking like, why am I doing this? And then it kind of just clicked that I needed a thicker barrier, I needed a thicker wall, and then through that, I've been able to really kind of, not to be an English teacher, but rise up through the ashes like a phoenix and feel like I can actually do my job and not take things personally. So that was one of the main things that I struggled with. But I think just also finding humor in it as well. Like sometimes I'll come in and I'll be like, what just happened? But those are the kind of the stories and the things that stick with me the most. I had a year 10 history class, which was the worst class in the cohort, and it was 27 kids, 25 boys, 2 girls, and it was just chaos, and they didn't like history, but they're probably the class that I think about the most sometimes because we did have some fun times in there despite how much they wanted to make me rip my hair out. So yeah, finding humor and also just not taking things too personally. Like, kids are kids. Yeah.
They certainly. How old were you at that time when you were facing a group of 27 students? So they're all 15, 16, maybe 17, depending on how they've traveled through school. But how old were you when you were having to deal with that?
I was 25, so that was pretty good. It wasn't too long ago. I think, I was in my third year of teaching, and I think having that distance as well sort of helped. I do think that if I had gone straight from uni to high school to uni, and then going straight to the school that I was at, I don't know if I would have had the the sort of skills and kind of like life lessons to think like, well, this is a lot right now, or I need to, you know, you know what I mean? Like, I think that kind of helped having that bit of that age gap. So I was about 10 years older than a lot of them in there, and I was able to deal with it in that way.
Yeah. Do you think it's tough? I guess some of your colleagues, maybe a little bit younger, do you see the struggle that they go through with trying to deal with, almost their peers? They're coming out of school, they're like 21, coming out of university, they're 21, 22, and they're having to try and teach anywhere from 16 to 18-year-olds. So do you see the struggles that they go through daily?
Oh, definitely. And especially mentoring teachers in the past, like I've done, and also in my current position, helping first year and second year teachers who have gone straight from high school to uni to out into a school with kids that are only a couple years younger than them. It is tough. And especially dealing with misogyny in some instances too, especially young female teachers, they cop it pretty badly. And it's also just being there for them and trying to help them de escalate and also teaching them strategies that they can apply in those classes. But yeah, it's definitely a crucial issue, and it's probably helping, or not helping, it's probably worsening the whole retention of early career teachers. Get in and university tells you one thing, and then you get to a school and you kind of not forget everything, but Vygotsky's out the window for the moment while you've got a kid who doesn't have any equipment hopping off outside because he hasn't had breakfast or he had a bad lesson in the last period. So helping them deal with that is definitely one of the issues that I'm seeing, especially as a middle leader currently.
Yeah, that must be tough. I mean, I've not worked in state schools and not worked in low socioeconomic areas. That's just where been my educational journey, and I am forever tipping my hat to teachers such as yourselves for doing that work. And yeah, I mean, I know with the students that I have, kids are kids, and they just have bad days. And I guess for you and for many other teachers like yourself, working in those, as you said, a postcode shouldn't determine your education, but unfortunately it does. Um, are you finding that the kids come in just stigmatized already? They're going, well, that's what they think of me. That's what they think of Logan. That's what they think of Beanley. That's what they think of, Liverpool and Sydney or wherever. Do they come in and go, well, that's what they think, so why bother?
I won't generalize it, but I have definitely had those conversations with kids like, why bother? Or like, Miss, we're from Logan, like, why does it matter that we're doing this? Or what do you think's going to happen when you say where you're from when you get to uni? And even having those conversations with some of my year 12s when they've done the uni days, it's really kind of opens their eyes a little bit of how much society does judge them. And I think one of the best things as a teacher you can do is just flip it back and be like, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what people think of you. All that matters is what you do and how you are as a person. And I really try to push that with the kids that I have, particularly when they're just being down about themselves or just being down about the situation that they're in. Like, this moment in time does not determine your worth. And that is something that you really need to hold on to and push through. Or you've already gone through the hardest part of your life up until this point. You can keep going. So that's kind of how I try to deal with it with them, because myself, I came from like Sunnybank, a very leafy green kind of area, but also coinciding with like very close to Logan. So I was very much aware of the stigma that surrounds the areas, but like I said, you can't really go into that with that deficit mindset, and getting them to meet you halfway is one of the harder things, but eventually it does stick if you just keep being consistent.
So consistency is the key with this. I'm going to say this demographic and generalize it, and I don't want to, again, I don't want to do that to the students, but in the midst of our conversation, but consistency is definitely the key to try and help them even just show up to school.
Yeah, and just knowing that the routines are in place, consistency is there, that your teacher is there and your teacher believes in you. And like, I have bad days, but if I go into the classroom and I take it out on the kids, then what's the point in them wanting to be there? Like, it completely ruins that relationship that's being built. And I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. But I think having to remind myself and having to remind, like, if I could go back and I talk to my younger self and just remind myself, like, what happens today, don't take it out on the kids. Don't, like, kids are kids. It is what it is. So yeah, I think consistency in that belief in students is the key to really trying to help people move over the line in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, in a different circumstance, but I also know that we're talking about students, and I think every teacher who's listening to this knows that students are students, children are children. It doesn't matter what postcode, how much money's in the bank. You still have a bad day. You still have a fight with your boyfriend, girlfriend, mum or dad. You skip breakfast. You fail a test, or you're worried about a test that's coming up, and that just throws your whole day out. So I guess is it? Do you find that that stigma just compounds all those normal everyday things that teenagers go through?
Yeah, and I think it's cyclic as well. So the frustrating thing is seeing the cycle happening, and also having to remind yourself that you're one part of that, and that if a student is so deep entrenched into it that it's really difficult to get them out of that just by being yourself. Like, you can only do the best that you can. But yeah, I do see that the stigma of the low SES, and just it does impact students to a large extent.
Are there any students that I guess they know where they're from, they know that everyone looks down upon them, but they have just got that inner drive to go, I am better than this, I am bigger than this, I am going to dig my way out, claw my way out of this to prove to everyone that good things can come from these areas and these schools.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think schools like Marsden in particular are really fantastic in that they pump out students who are national success stories, students who go to the Olympics, students who are thriving. I think my current school, currently Chinchilla State High School, we had our softball team. We have someone who is now on the national team for Australia and possibly going overseas. Music stars and all of that. I think it's also just the amount of effort and time that teachers put into helping and supporting students, because opportunities don't just come up without nothing. You need someone helping to drive that as well. So yeah, I think there's definitely students, even thinking about my year 12s last year, there are so many students who are pushing themselves to go on above and beyond their means, and also trying to manage being at uni and also working as well and looking after themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I don't know a lot about Education Queensland. I've only been up in the state for under 10 years now, but I have heard amazing things about the sports program from Marsden High up in Brisbane. So, yeah, and you find that these, I mean, I know even down in New South Wales, the regional and rural communities tend to shine when it comes to athletics and sporting and music. I mean, we look at years ago. I'm showing my age here, but with Jessica Malboy, who came out of the Red Centre, just a young Indigenous woman, had something and just had a shot. So, do you find that the other students around them look at them and go, oh, I can do that too, or do they have that typical Australian, the tall poppy syndrome and try and cut them down, or do you find it a mixture?
I think it's a mixture. It definitely depends on the cohorts that you teach, and also just the blend of them as well. So yeah, I'd say it's a bit of both. Like, or it's probably that whole shame factor of like wanting to be like them, but also just not wanting to outwardly do it. Yeah, being passive about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's just that typical Australian thing, just to go, yeah, no, you're not as good as you think you are. Just check
Yeah.
yourself, please. And
Yeah,
but
I
I
see
think
that. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say I see that a lot with like the teaching sphere as well, just like at flipping away from students back towards teachers. Just if someone is doing something, it's definitely can have that toxicity around it of like, oh, they're just resume building, or they're just working hard, like trying hard or anything like that, and it's quite disappointing as well. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's an interesting observation. I mean, I guess I haven't paid too much attention to it. I've probably heard the comments, but yeah, very interesting observation from a. I mean, I've been in the game for 23 years now, so I've seen a few things, and maybe it's just I let a lot of stuff slide. So maybe I should be paying more attention to some of these conversations. Is that stuff that you've seen? Like I guess across the board, maybe at departmental meetings or like school meetings, or is it when you've been to conferences?
Yeah, it's probably more with the inter-school conferences. Just I do see a lot of the rivalries happening, if that makes sense. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been subject to that myself many years ago. I was probably probably about the same age as teaching years as you are now. Back in the day, I was at a conference and I was just having a great chat with another teacher, and then he just goes, "Oh, so where do you work?" And I told him the school I worked at, and it was and one of the elite private schools down in Sydney. And immediately, mid conversation, he just stopped talking and walked away from me. And it was purely because I was in the private system and he was in the state education system. So yeah, I've definitely had things happen very similar to some of those observations and conversations that you hear as well. So it's well, that's what I thought, but I guess we can only control our reactions, not anyone else's.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
So you've been out of uni only sort of 7 years. Do you think university is preparing young teachers well enough for the classroom or for the school environment?
I don't think my university prepared me as much as it could have, if that makes sense. I definitely feel like I learned the most when I was on my internship. So I did 4 weeks at Beenleigh State High School, and then I did a 4-week internship straight away after that, where I was just alone in the classroom and teaching a group of kids. I think I learned the most about being a teacher from my mentor and also just from being in that environment. So I think there's definitely more work that needs to be done, and I know there's the review that came out and the proposals for how they are going to change initial teacher education. But I think definitely getting teachers out and actually bringing in back in that internship that is paid would be beneficial to seeing if teachers are actually being able to apply the skills. But I'm also someone who learns by doing. I'm not really someone who learns by listening, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I was the same. Like I was lucky with the university I went to in Sydney. So I did a 3-year design degree and followed on by a single year teaching degree. So they took all our subject area from our first one, and then just put us into the teaching practice. And so of our 12 months of university, 12 weeks of that we were in classrooms. So as far as the theory went, it was just like, yeah, they're talking, but when you get your feet on the ground, that's when the real learning happens. That's how I found it anyway. So it sounds not much has changed in the 20 years of teaching or teaching education. So
I don't think so, no. And I know Claudia, my wife, has currently got a prac teacher currently, and it's their first prac, and it sounds like at least their first year they're out in prac, so that's definitely a upgrade from when I was out in university. So it sounds like it's just constantly changing, but yeah, definitely I think more practicums and the incentive to actually be out in the education, like getting a university degree in education would definitely help.
yeah, it sounds like I was talking to a teacher again, a little bit older than myself. And he mentioned when he was doing his teacher training, they had basically it was a teacher apprenticeship. So like you would do a carpentry or mechanic or anything like that, you're actually you're an apprentice. You're getting paid not as much as the lead teachers, but you're in the classroom. You're learning. You're supervised. You have your direct supervision, so you're never alone, and you're learning your craft. So you mentioned, the report of, they're looking at, redoing teacher training. Do you think something like that may be of benefit for new teachers?
I think, yeah, it could. Just on that, I'm in a bit of an interesting situation right now with my current teaching load, because I came in halfway through the year and I also had the first week off for parental leave. But my current load I am sharing with a first year teacher, like one class. We both teach at the same time. And the goal of that is also to ease me into it, but also let her have like a go at seeing what I'm like as a 7th year teacher. And so far from the feedback that I've gotten from her, it's been working really well. Like she's been trying all these new things based on, like in her other classes, based on what has been happening. So even something like that, where a first year teacher is kind of buddied up with someone who's more experienced, if the school would have the resources for that. I'm just very lucky in the situation that I'm in. But I think, yeah, it's kind of like an apprenticeship, except she's getting paid full time, which is fantastic. And yeah, I think it would definitely be beneficial to add that into the degree at some point.
Yeah, I guess we can only have these conversations and hopefully talk to the right people but it sounds like things are starting to change. And I know the federal education minister, he's trying to do a lot for education, so let's hope it has some more immediate effects. I know there'll be stuff that'll take a long time to happen, but yeah, we're both in a profession that we love, so hopefully we'll be able to get a few more people to actually stay in it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's so much focus on getting new teachers, but not retaining teachers and just keeping the teachers that are currently experienced happy and wanting to be here. So, yeah, I think that conversation definitely needs to shift as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Gonski earlier, and that you've just gone, yeah. When it comes to a school, some of the schools that you've been at, it's just like, yeah, that's thrown out the window because regardless of whatever is in the report, it's just not practical to implement. There's more pressing matters that are required on a daily basis. So, how do you think that would play out? Like, what are some of the tangible things that you see where you go, yeah, well, Gonski says the report says this, but this is what is needed right now.
I think that my 7 years of teaching, so I don't know everything, but I do think that there is the conversations around well-being, and I wholeheartedly agree that well-being, it should be at the forefront of teacher education and also just the practicalities in the classroom. But I also think that early intervention is also something that needs to be addressed. So currently, as a secondary teacher in the English field, teaching kids how to read is something that I wasn't really taught in university. However, I have kids in year 10 or I have had kids in year 10 in the past who struggle to write and struggle to read. And because of that, they disengage. They aren't getting fed before school, coming to school and just pumping energy drinks. And it all creates that. And that's kind of where I see like the theory side of university. It's in the back of my mind, but I can't really focus too much on it because I'm trying to get this kid back in the classroom and actually sitting and being with his peers. So I think that well-being and also literacy and numeracy intervention at an early stage is something that probably is in the forefront. And I know that the education side in Victoria and Canberra have recently announced that they are introducing early intervention with phonics and morphology in primary schools. But I think as well that should be something that every teacher should be able to identify, like what student needs intervention, and where like having those systems in place where we can actually support them. Because asking any high school teacher, how do you teach a teacher to read? Some people can do it, some people can't. And we need to be able to read, we need to be able to write, and we need to be able to comprehend in everything. So that's kind of where I see that.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. I mean, that leads into one of the questions I was about to ask you when we were talking about literacy, and then I will definitely touch on the well-being. But I hear that the literacy rates are terrible, and there's this and there's that. Now, are the negative press, because everyone loves negative press, everyone loves the clickbait. We've just had NAPLAN, and unfortunately, so many teachers. Or so many schools place so much value on NAPLAN, which it does have value. Please don't get me wrong, but what is it? It's turned into a league table. But and teachers like yourself and thousands of others are doing a tremendous job in trying to teach these kids how to read, how to write, how to comprehend. But is the literacy as bad as it's reported, or is it worse, or is it better, or is it just it is what it is?
I see it as it's one test in time, and there are definitely kids that disengage, but I know that when they analyze the NAPLAN data, they tend to take those students out, from what I've heard, to do that. I'd say like the 7 years that I've been teaching, it does feel like it's gotten a bit worse, but I think that could also be either the run-on effects of COVID or the increased amounts of screen time and just maybe the different pedagogies that are coming into play or the zeitgeist around what is good teaching. It should be explicit instruction or it should be structured literacy or balanced literacy. So I think all of that jumbled up has kind of had that impact as well. So short answer, yes, I do definitely see that decrease in just not being able to apply literacy and being able to comprehend. But I don't think I think NAPLAN can give you a glimpse, but I don't think it really does the justice of what is happening with a student, particularly when you consider it in comparison to ACARA and just from English, the perspective, the different modes and the different elements of our standard elaborations that come into play. So I think NAPLAN has its merits in some ways, but I also see that there are other screeners that you could probably use in place. Like Dibbles is a fantastic one that is only about 5 to 10 minutes that you can really see from K to 8 where kids are comprehending. So that's kind of where I see it.
Yeah, because I'm very much out of out of that, really seeing the bread and butter of reading and writing. I teach design, and we have very limited. We don't do essays, we don't do reports, we do written work, obviously. And if I see an error, I'll correct it. But I don't see that most of the learning that I see is the practical learning. So I know that they've understood it because they can do it. Are you finding that the more that you're teaching, you're having to change some strategies to as far as assessment goes with them? It's like, rather than getting them to write an essay, get them to give you a presentation as or something like similar to that, to show that they've understood the objectives, learnt the topic, and can actually tell you and show that their knowledge has broadened.
Yeah, definitely. And the school that I'm currently at has a big focus on UDL, the Universal Design for Learning. So the whole approach is essentially this is the skill set we are teaching, but the mode in which you present it could be different. So if a student is really struggling with actually writing it, they could speak what they need to be assessed on, or record it in a different way, or present it in a different way. So the school I'm currently at, yes, they definitely do that. At my previous school, we had a reevaluation, particularly version 9 coming in, where we were finding we were over-assessing to the extent where we were getting year 7s to write full essays when we could probably just chunk it out into paragraphs. So yeah, I've definitely had the pivot in my head of I need to reevaluate what is engaging, what is purposeful, and what is actually going to develop those skills across, so that when they get to year 10, if they want to leave or continue on into the ATAR pathway, how do we get them there?
Yeah, well, it's and that's what I'm looking at as well. It's like, how do we get them to show up? And like I said, if they make something for me and then do it safely and correctly, then I know they've listened, they've learned, they've understood. But I guess, yeah, it's good to, and that the UDL there, I've seen the acronym. I've heard it, but I've not really delved into it. So I'd like to. Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk more about it in the future to see how it's going, because I'd love to learn more. I'm one of those. I'd be a lifelong learner, because if something's new and it can help the students, then I'm all for it. If it's just new and shiny, I don't want it. But if it can help the students, then yeah. So yeah, I'd love to. I'll definitely have to look into that one. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no dramas. We'll have some good chats about that next time I'm up.
Yeah, definitely. Now I'm gonna just wind it back just a little bit. We've gone into some pretty deep stuff there, but you've chosen English and history as your teaching KLAs. What's with that? For me as a student, They were some of my worst subjects. We had to do essays and we had to do presentations and we had to write stuff, and it was just like,
Like,
what?
that's the fun, Phil. That's why it's great. Don't you like reading? Don't you like analyzing the authorial intention?
I love reading. As far as euphorial conventions, is that the word? I don't know about that one. So what drew you to that subject area?
Well, first one, my university only offered English. If I picked English as my major, I had to do either history or maths, and I wasn't. I'm not a maths gal. I did maths A, which is essentially like general maths currently, so not for me. But yeah, if I had my choice, I would have done biology or drama because those were my fields that I actually really liked in high school. But yeah, it came back to just my English teacher was amazing. She was so great, and I think she's actually the head of English at McGregor State High School now, Kathy McKenna, and she's made me want to keep reading and enjoyed, and I really found her motivating. So even though like the subject was a bit dry, like reading Othello and also Romeo and Juliet, looking at newspaper articles and writing feature articles, which that was the only time I wrote a feature article. I've never had to read it since. So yeah. But yeah, I just really enjoyed it, and I was a little bit of a reader. I have popped off, but now I've popped back onto reading for pleasure, which has been lovely because now I can actually have the time to do so. But yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I thought English was fun, and that's kind of the way that I go about it. And I think that if you just go into it and you just like, all right, we're analyzing poetry, we're going to do structure, figurative language, etc. If you go into it like an essential question, like for instance, Ozymandias, and if you look at what happens when you die, and start off with that, and then you talk about like what matters most in life. Is it your accomplishments, or is it the tombstone that you leave behind? And getting kids to ponder things like that, and then talking about the poem, which is about an old pharaoh who had died hundreds of years ago, and people didn't remember him except for a crumbling monolith. So hooking kids in like that, I find fun. And yeah, I'm just really jazz on English. I think it's great. History I like too, and I think it's fun to delve into. It's very much more, you can get really hands-on with it. So like today we had our junior secondary showcase where we had our year sixes come, and one of my fabulous staff, she brought out some dig kits where kids could actually be like archaeologists and dig and find fossils and things and get really hands-on with it. So I think there are ways that you can make both of the subjects interesting. You just got to kind of think outside the box a little bit with that.
Yeah, I guess that's what it comes down to. I mean, maybe look, I remember my English and one of my history teachers, and look, they were fantastic. They tolerated me and allowed me to get away with. They allowed me to get away with a fair amount of stuff. I remember my English teacher. She was a small little lady, Mrs. Green, her name was, and me and the mates are up the back. We're just carrying on like young lads do. And instead of like, she scolded us, don't get me wrong, but instead of like kicking us out of the classroom so we definitely wouldn't hear, what she did is she moved us to the front of the classroom, and then she stood with her back to us. So we're facing the board, she's facing the rest of the class. So all the noise that we kept on making was just going to the front, not disturbing the rest. But I think we probably still heard a little bit here and there. So I still remember her as a look. She was lovely. She put up with a lot. Especially I was the third Murdoch boy through that school as well. So
Dang, good work to Mrs. Green.
Yes, and my history teacher was good. Oh yeah, there was again third boy in through the school. So it's the name Murdoch was synonymous with a few shenanigans, that's for sure.
Nice.
But I saw you light up when you started talking about your subject area, especially English. So I guess it's a passion that you were able to bring into the classroom. So you mentioned a couple of books. Are those some of the books that you studied? Are they still in the curriculum, or so?
Oh yeah.
Do you look at them in a different light now that you're teaching them? Can you extract more from the story to give to your students?
Oh yeah, one of my favorite texts to actually teach is Macbeth, and I know people always have the idea of like, well, not everyone, but I know the common conversation is why do we still teach Shakespeare? What's the point? Like kids just disengage, and even having that argument or that discussion, I should say, with year 10 students who just don't get it. Um, I love teaching it. It's all about murder. I tell the kids it's all about don't dog the boys because that's essentially what Macbeth does. And you know, I just think it's really fun. And looking back on it, I probably wouldn't have engaged it with it too much as a high school student back when I was studying it. But I just really find, as an adult and also as having taught it a couple times, I just find it so much fun to teach and also just have those rich conversations. Um, One of the other ones I taught last year in Cold Blood, I don't know, have you read that one before, Phil?
No, I've not read that one.
So that's one of the easier, in my opinion, text lists on the literature syllabus, and it's quite hard, but it's a little dry, but the conversations that you can get out of it about crime and punishment and the death penalty and also just ethics and morality, like I think those were some of my favorite lessons to come into of my year 12s because they were so into the book because we would just sit and read and discuss and break it down in that way. So yeah, I think that as an adult I see the merit in also teaching classic literature. Having said that, I like teaching modern lit too to kids, so because I think it's just a bit more fun and a bit relevant.
Yeah, I guess it's making it relevant and being able to translate it into terms that they can understand. So
Yeah,
sounds like you're doing a fantastic job at it, Alice. So
I'm trying. So thank you, Phil.
well, look, you mentioned I mentioned my English teacher and history teacher. I had an amazing geography teacher who, yeah, definitely put up with a lot from us. But and you mentioned you liked your English teacher, and I think it. I think we all have at least one teacher that has invested in us, and not necessarily in our curriculum or in our learning or trying to get content through or getting us the pass mark that we need, but they've actually invested in us. And it sounds like you are starting to do that, and I think probably many years from now that there'll be a number of students who go, "Oh yeah, I remember Miss Tipler. She was fantastic. She actually valued me." So, do you find that one of your highest priorities in the classroom is building the relationship with the student first?
Yeah, I definitely try to. I think it comes back to my comments earlier about well-being and engagement and literacy. Like, you can't. People don't want to learn from people that they don't like, and you get hit back with a lot of like, oh, this person's disrespecting me, or this teacher's disrespectful, and it's like, let's have a conversation, let's bring it back. Like, we need to fix this because there's something's happened that we need to actually address. Yeah, so I think relationships, you can't teach if you don't have relationships. You can't learn if you don't respect or like the person that, well, you don't have to like everyone, but I definitely think that it's an inhibitor in education if you can't have that connection with kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm a relational teacher myself, so it's like, and I'm exactly along that thought. Unless I can reach the student on a personal level and be able to talk to them, I'm not going to be able to teach them because
Mhm.
they. I mean, I know what I'm like. If I don't like someone or if someone's rubbed me the wrong way, I think it's just human nature. It's like, yeah, you're off the Christmas card list, and that's it. But having a good relationship is critical for well-being. And do you find that when that relationship strengthens, that you build that trust and that safe environment that is a classroom, and that might be their only safe area for the day. Like when they walk in the school gates, that could be their only. They know that they're safe for at least 6 to 8 hours. Um, so, do you find that once that relationship's there, they start to open up, and then that then helps facilitate some of the things that need to be put in place to help them with their well-being?
Yeah, definitely. It's I did mention earlier that I didn't feel like my university degree helped me a lot, but there was one course, and I know it's still happening. It's Trauma Informed Practice by Professor Judith. I can't even remember her surname, but I know she's working in there. But I think that's where I really learned about, which helped learn about how to connect with kids and how to think back. Like a behavior is a result of, there's a reason behind a behavior. Kids just don't go out there and say, I'm going to be malicious, or I'm going to be the worst person in the world, or I'm going to do this to ruin someone. Like, I'm sure there are some kids that do that, but most of the time there is a reason behind that. And if you can make someone, a student, feel comfortable enough to actually open up and be like, yeah, this happened, or we're actually living in our car, or we haven't had food, or X granddad's died and mum's gone overseas to New Zealand for a couple of weeks. Like, those kind of things can actually really kind of help to pull it back. I always tell kids, like, if you're having a bad day, just let me know and we can work around that. But if you don't tell me anything, I'm not a mind reader, so how can I help you? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always there's always a drive behind the behavior. Like you said, it could be they didn't have breakfast, or they just hopped up on the energy drinks and then they crash. But then there's also the trauma that can happen on a daily basis with some of these students, both in regardless of postcode. It happens. With so you're working in Browns Plains, metropolitan Brisbane, greater metropolitan Brisbane, and then you've decided to move out to Chinchilla, which is about 3.5, 4 hours from the centre of Brisbane.
Yeah.
So what facilitated that? What was that? Was it? I mean, by the sounds of it, it wasn't, not really chasing a promotional position. By the sounds of it, you have plenty of opportunities, where you were at, prior. But what was one of the drives to move out into where definitely teachers are needed out in our regional and rural centres?
Um. Well, actually, my previous principal actually forwarded me the job and said, I thought this might be a good opportunity for you. So I clicked into it. I had a look and I was like, oh, Chinchilla, that's so far away. But I called the principal and I had a chat with him about just the school, and he was pretty honest about the good things they were doing and also the things that they needed work in. So that I had a good feeling about it. That was one of the things that I found. When I looked into the school, it was very open communication. I liked the units. I had a look at the ICSIA and I had a look at the behavior data. It seemed great. I saw the perks of moving out. So teacher accommodation my rent was quartered, which was crazy in this housing crisis that we're in. The teachers, when I came out to meet them, were all lovely and young staff, but also willing and eager to work and to also work together. And I just found that the sense of community was strong and I had a great feeling about it. And in hindsight, I'm really glad that I applied for the position. It was scary and I was really nervous about applying, just in the sense of that imposter syndrome, like you're only a seventh year, you're trying to go above your means, or you don't have much to give, and then somehow I got it. So I think, yeah, it was just a bit of luck and a bit of me really working hard early in my career to really set that basis. Because in my first year, my first APDP meeting, my SMART goals meeting with my HOD, who was amazing, I said to her, I want to be a HOD someday. And she sat with me and said, okay, let's brainstorm how we can get you there. And she got me there and I got me there. And yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell why I'm out here.
It sounds like you've had a tremendous amount of professional support. Like, for a principal to go, here's a job, and we have a teacher shortage. Here's a job. I want you to apply for it. knowing that he's not only, if you are successful, he's not only going to lose you as a staff member, but he's also going to lose another staff member, your other half, young Claudia. So he saw enough potential and the value that you could add. So that must make you feel, I guess, pretty good.
Yeah, it definitely did. I definitely deal with the tall poppy and the imposter syndrome a lot, but yeah, I was surprised, but I was also really grateful that I guess my accomplishments were something that was noticed and also kind of valued in that regard. So I think if there should definitely be more principals or more, not principals, leaders who see the value in pushing and helping to support others, because that's how we kind of make a better educational system for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like your you distinguished to, not just principals but leaders, because I think and you've possibly experienced it, but and I know I've seen it as well. There is a big difference between a principal and a leader. They might have the same. They might the title might be, the leader might have the principal title, but the principal doesn't always have the leader qualities there.
That's it. And I think my mentor in my career, who was my previous HOD, Letitia Dwyer, she was someone who I think she was also an early career HOD. So in her third year, she became a head of English, and I just learned so much from her on how to lead and how to be a good person in regards to the teaching sphere and just in general. I think that my leadership model, the model that I really try to work towards, is very similar to hers in the sense that she was always supportive, and I never felt like a bother. I never felt like my questions were silly or that I couldn't ask for help. So I don't think I would be in this situation right now if I didn't have someone like her who was fighting for me and supporting for me.
Yeah, and I guess you'll now use that as a drive to, I guess, and what it sounds like you're already modelling that to early career teachers already.
Yeah.
Even though I see you almost still as an early career teacher.
Still feel like an early career teacher, but then I'm like, no, I've moved out of that 5-year phase, but it still feels quite not vulnerable, but very much like I still have a lot to learn. I'm never going to stop learning.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's fantastic to hear that you've got this drive, this passion, this love for education, for your students, and for improvement, with everyone that you come into contact, both staff, students, and yourself. So that's amazing, Alice. I'm inspired.
Oh, thank you. It's all the support. Like, couldn't do it without my wife, who's also an English teacher in the trenches, trying to get her kids to care about the subjects as well. And people like you as well, like being able to have those realistic chats and talk about, like, this is what's happening, this is how I'm feeling. Oh, yeah, we can do this.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one thing that I love to do, and this is also one of the reasons for the podcast, for people like yourselves who are in the coalface, who are doing it and doing it very tough and working, in some pretty tough conditions with some very tough student, populations, but you have that drive, and to hear your story. And I think when others hear your story, it'll resonate with them and hopefully inspire them to just push through that barrier, or to reach out and to go, oh, I need some help, or to go, you know what, maybe this school's not for me. Maybe I want to stay teaching, but maybe I just need to change my environment which I'm teaching in.
Yeah, that's it. I feel like I've been very it's been very serendipitous in my career where I've just had some good luck randomly, where like the teacher that I sat with on my first day, who was my desk buddy for my first year, she turned to me first week and was like, just remember, you're replaceable. You don't need to do everything in the unit. You just need to do what your kids need, and I'm here for you. And I was like, wow. And then it's always been in the back of my mind because she has been teaching for nearly 40 years, and she was she is someone who is still there for her kids, and she works as hard as possible to what she needs to. So I think hearing that in my first week was something that really kind of resonated with me. And again, linking back to like, don't take things personally, find some humor, and also it will get done. That was kind of what my mindset was, to help me avoid burnout and get through that first 5 years.
Yeah, because that first 5 years is the toughest, and yeah, because you want to be the best you can be, but you can't do everything, and unfortunately, so many people think they need to be perfect and they need to do everything. But that is some sage advice from that very much a veteran teacher, to just do what you can and look after yourself, and again, it touches on that well-being point of view. She was looking out for you straight away. That was her first priority, was to look out for you, and in turn looking out for the students. So that's an awesome, and that's just a piece of gold right there. That statement from her. So, and by the sounds of it, it's helped keep you in the career and a profession that you love.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, it is a school night, Alice, and it is week 7 up here in Queensland. So,
yeah.
we're both getting a little bit weary, but we've covered some amazing topics, and you have just dropped some absolute gold, which I so appreciate. But just to finish off, just a little bit of fun, a couple of last little questions. And I think I definitely have to have you on again, because there's some stuff I wanted to talk about when it comes to ed tech and the early teacher career award. There's a whole bunch of stuff I wanted to talk about, but time doesn't permit. So I'll have to have you back on again. But just to wrap up, a couple of little quick questions just to find out a little bit about who is Alice. What's your favourite drink?
Like my favorite alcoholic drink?
Could be that, could be anything, but just your favourite drink.
I like a pina colada, but then I also like a mocha and lactose-free milk. Yeah. There you go.
All right, so mocha in the morning, pina colada in the afternoon.
That's it.
That sounds like a plan. Now, if you had to challenge our listeners, or had one challenge you'd like to pose to the listeners, what might that be?
You mean, okay, I would challenge you to contact a parent of a student who has done something positive in the week, because that is something that I rarely find the time to do, and when I do, I always feel better about it, so that I make that positive phone call home.
Absolutely, parents love to hear good news, and yeah, and it's good to give. Better to give than to receive as well. So yeah, that's definitely a positive. I like that one. I should try and do that more. Now, do you have a favorite? Yeah, being an English teacher, do you have a favorite quote or mantra that you sort of hold on to, or has helped you get through things, or that just inspires you?
To be honest, there's so many to think of, but the one that sticks out to me that came straight to my head was "To be thus is nothing," or from Hamlet. So I don't like Hamlet. I find Hamlet really like I hate Hamlet. I hate teaching it, and if I could, I wouldn't. But I do find that there are some gems in there, or "To thine own self be true." So I think that was the one that popped into my head. Unfortunately, it's from Hamlet, but there you go.
But it still rings true to this day. So yeah,
Definitely does. Yeah.
And as a teacher, we definitely need to be true to ourselves, because that's, if we try and replicate someone else, we just don't reach the students. So
that's it.
Absolutely. Now, wouldn't be the Tattoo Teacher podcast if I didn't ask you, do you have any tattoos?
Oh, how lucky. So I have been a wuss about it throughout my entire life, and always been like, I want a tattoo, I'm going to do it. And I just am I overthink things. But my lovely wife, Claudia, surprised me and was like, I booked something. And yeah, she gave me, no, she didn't give it to me. She booked for me a bunny tattoo on my arm. Yeah. So that was my my Band-Aid tattoo. Now I'm like, I need more. So yeah.
Yeah, it can be quite an addictive habit. So
Got that itch now. I need to get more. So
yeah, as you can see, I've got one or two. So Now, last but not least, if people wanted to reach out to you, maybe talk to you about English or history or about your journey, where would be a good place just to reach out?
I do have a LinkedIn under Alys Tipler. I don't really use it too often, but I'm trying to force myself to do it more lately, so I'll definitely be posting more on that. And also just my email address, atipl4@eq.edu.au. So those are the two best places to find me.
All right, that is fantastic. I'll make sure I just put that in the show notes as well,
Nice.
so that people can have that. But Alys, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you tonight. And like I said earlier, you're an inspiration as a young teacher, as a just the way you view school, your students, your passion for it. So thank you for your time. I truly appreciate it. I appreciate you. Good luck with the last few weeks of term, and I'm sure you will enjoy a break that's coming up.
Oh, definitely. And thank you for having me. I was very nervous about this, like, what am I going to say? But I feel like, yeah, it's been really great to talk to you.
Well, likewise, Alys, it's been fantastic to talk to you. So you have a wonderful evening, and we'll catch up again soon.
Cool. Thanks, Phil. See ya.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. If you like what you heard, it would mean so much to me if you could either like, follow, and subscribe to whatever platform you are listening on. The music was by DJ Fruit Salad. Thanks again for listening. Stay cool. Be blessed.